Hi, I'm Shanti Flack, and I'm the studio director and a collective member at Force Upsetting Rape Culture.
Hi, my name is Charnel Colbert, and I'm the community organizer for Force and a part of Force's collective.
My name is Hannah Brancato, and I'm a collective member at Force and the co-founder and creative director.
Hello, my name is Gloria Gard. I am the mother of makeup art, and welcome to my show, Artist Highlights, where I highlight artists and art organizations in Baltimore City. Today, I'm going to be highlighting Force. Force is an organization that is trying to upset this culture of rape that we just not have in our country, but in the world. And I can tell you now that I'm involved with Force because I had an incident in my life that I need healing. And they do healing through the Monument Quilt, but you're not here listening to me talk. I have Force right here. So I am going to ask Hannah, okay, to tell you something more about Force, how I get started, and about the Monument Quilt. Hannah?
Sure. Yeah, so I'll talk a little about history and then Shanti will jump in too. Sure. So the Force started in 2010 as a way to have a more public conversation about sexual and domestic violence. At the time, I personally was working at the House of Ruth, Maryland, and making art with survivors within the shelter, which is a very private space to protect people's safety. And what it made, I had so much learning in that experience and was able to actually name my own experience of abuse for the first time when I was working there. So it really drove me personally to want to have the same conversations that we were having in that private space and public platform. So Force was co-founded by myself and Rebecca Nagel, and then it's currently led by Shanti Flag, Saida Agostini, Charnel Colbert, and me, Hannah Brancato. You know, we've done projects ranging from wanting to promote consent and make consent a more mainstream idea, teaching people about healthy relationships, to creating spaces to support survivors, like the Monument Quilt and the survivor organizing campaign that we're working on now.
Please tell me more about the Monument Quilt.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Monument Quilt is a quilted collection of stories from survivors of rape and abuse and their allies. So people create quilt squares with their own stories on them, or with messages of support to other survivors or victims. And then here in the studio in Baltimore, I coordinate volunteers to sew them together into 8-foot by 8-foot quilts. We install these quilts in public places that people can walk through them, and in that way create a public healing space for survivors of rape and abuse.
That was wonderful, and let me tell you how I got involved with the Monument Quilt. I knew Hannah, okay, for a long time, and when she told me what she was doing, and I'm like, that's wonderful, I want to be part of that. And I work with senior citizens, so when I told the senior citizens about Force and the Monument Quilt, they wanted to share. So it was 7 organizations, senior organizations, and over the summer of last year, they made almost 50 quilt squares, and from those quilt squares, they had almost 12 quilts. And it was just so touching, it really was. Some of them that was there were, you know, you are loved, you are beautiful. Jesus is around. Stop the killing, stop the violence. Love doesn't hurt. So it was just an opportunity for them to share too. So it was just a wonderful experience for me. And I'm just glad that I could be part of the Monument Quilt. And I want you all to tell me the significance, okay, of the red material and how you got the red material and the backing that's on it, and how you got these industrialized sewing machines. Who would like to share that?
Yeah, I can start. So the backing material, it's like a waterproof backing material that a bunch of different volunteers that know a lot about public art and sewing helped us figure out when we were starting the Monument Quilt. If we're going to blanket a mile of the National Mall, like what material should we use to do that? And so it's house wrap material. It's like what's used when houses are under construction. And one of the members of Force's leadership team, Leanne Sham, actually worked through her aunt, Susan Hayes, to get a donation of $15,000 worth of house wrap. And so that donation is what we're still working on today to put behind all the quilts that we make and protect them. And then, yeah, the quilts are in color red so that this is something that you cannot ignore. It's something that when people see it from a distance, it catches their eye. The quilts literally blanket the ground to take up public space. And when you're walking by, even if you don't know what it's about, I think it has like a pull. Like I think that the quilts have like a lot of spirit and energy in them, and they kind of draw you to them. And the color is just like magnifying the power of the stories that are on them. Yeah, you should talk about the sewing machines and stuff. And the materials.
Yeah, well, and then the project is planned to culminate next year in a display on the National Mall. Since that's a site of other monuments, this will be like a monument to survivors there. So I think, when the project was started, that was the vision, is that it would end up there. So it would be on green grass, and red and green are complementary colors. So there's a like high contrast when you photograph it from the sky, which is part of the consideration of creating a project like this. So the industrial sewing machines, I was not here for that one that got donated. We have two of them, and we have two industrial sewing machines, and then a bunch of like household sewing machines, and almost all of the machines that we have were donated. I think all of them at this point were donated, and yeah, who donated that one?
So the first, that industrial machine we're looking at across the room, we can take a picture of it later, was donated by a woman named Regina, who supported the Monument Quilt early on in the beginning. Regina Armenta, she doesn't live in Baltimore anymore. Serena Anderson, who's part of Gather Together, donated a few machines. She has her own apron sewing business, Serena's Custom Aprons. You can look her up.
Okay.
And we've gotten Stitches, etc. has donated some machines to us as well.
And then now I'm totally blanking.
Kelsey Schneider donated a machine to us early on. She was one of she was actually running the studio as a volunteer for the Monument Quilt, like right when we started. Before Shanti started.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So now, I just went to a wonderful conference, the Survivors Convening conference by Fruitus, and I was told that you were there and you just did a wonderful, wonderful job.
Thank you.
Can you please tell me about that conference?
So the Survivors Convening was a day of healing for all victim survivors of rape and domestic violence. And what made it so special is that we had artists come in to do some of the activities with our group. I was very nervous about the outcome. I didn't know if anybody was going to make it, but we had about 40 people there, so it was a very good turnout. And the purpose of the Survivors Convening was to use some of the questions from the listening campaign, which I can talk about in a little bit, but to use some of the questions from the listening campaign in group listening sessions, which we did, and to take those group listening sessions and show them to the candidates who are running for office at the candidate forum on June 12th. So the real purpose of it was to see what people think we need to have a rape-free city in Baltimore, and also what other questions that survivors might have in terms of, or support that they may need, and laws that they need passed through the group listening session. So overall, it was a very successful day, and we got a lot of great feedback from folks about it.
Tell me more about the listening campaign.
The listening campaign is started with a group called Gather Together, and working collectively with Force as a collective. The listening campaign trains victim survivors to interview other victim survivors, so about their experiences, and also to do it in group sessions in terms of listening. So it really is key on having accuracy skills to hear the story of someone else and to document that story so that we know it's valuable. We know that using stories to combat upset and rape culture is a big thing.
That is so important because art truly can heal.
Yes, for sure.
And when you can make your own beauty, okay, that's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
And when we can all come together to make that beauty, to heal one another, that was just so, so wonderful. And I like the audience to know what can they do to help support Force in their mission of upsetting the rape culture, just not in Baltimore, but in this country.
Well, people can always donate money. So Foresight is actually funded almost primarily by individual people who give like any amount from $5 to $5,000. We get grants and stuff like that too, but our community support, I think, is part of how we know if we're living up to our vision, because we're accountable to the community that is both part of the listening campaign and part of the Monument Quilt, and that is supporting us too, because we know that we need to create a world that doesn't exist. Another way, though, is to get involved in Force. So Charnel mentioned the listening campaign candidate forum on June 12th, 7:30 p.m. at the Motor House. We also have a few other upcoming events. Do you want to talk about a listening campaign training?
Yes, we have a listening campaign training on June 11th at 6 to 8. And we'll be training people at that point how to use the tools to interview someone, how to use the consent forms that we have made up, and how to take care of it. You have to take care of yourself in this work because it's very heavy work. And so we'll also be looking at folks' ways of having a self-care plan.
You know what I want you all to talk about, because Force is just not in Baltimore City, okay? Force is really a nationwide organization. And you here have over 2,000 squares, over 500 quilts from all over the country. And then you display them all over the country. I know you just had a big display in California. So can you tell me how that came about?
Yeah, sure. Well, so you mean how the last displays came
Yes.
about? So almost like all displays of the Monument Quilt happen because someone locally, we coordinate with that person to make the event happen. So we're really completely, I'm sorry, I'm looking for the right word. We're dependent on our like local partners and their like organizing skills and their passion to make the amazing events happen. So we recently, last year around this time, we were doing the West Coast tour. So I think that was 9 stops across the western side of the country. So that included California, Oklahoma, and one of the main events of the tour was a display on the border of the U.S. and Mexico at El Paso and Juarez. So we had 2 displays on either side of the border where we spelled out "not alone" in English and in Spanish. And that took place on Trump's 100th day in office, and it was to protest his xenophobic and racist immigration policies that create sexual violence at the border. And that occurred because of many local partners and had been something that they and we had been planning to do for years before it happened. You can imagine that was like a big thing to put together. So how the displays happen is just with a lot of help from volunteers. On the day of, like in terms of like installing volunteers here locally in Baltimore to help pack the truck. Volunteers or paid people to drive the quilts places, and then same every time we display the quilt, it's because someone in that location was passionate about making it happen.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, I was amazed on how you all store the quilts. Okay, there's a process that you use. Okay, I was here for the whole thing. You make the quilt. Okay, then you sew things around the quilt. Then you have to sew it on the back and on the quilt. And it's 4 squares together. Sometimes it's 4 squares together most of the time, right? And it was just amazing how you all did that. But it's amazing how you store it, okay? So I want you to tell people about this storing process and this rolling process that you all came up with.
Well, we see ourselves in, we can both talk about this, since Shanti, since you manage the studio, but in the process for storing and counting the quilts and archiving them is something, again, that we really depended on volunteers in the beginning to help us figure out how to do well, because we see ourselves as we're kind of caretaking for these stories, and We want to make sure that we keep track of them and that people are able to find their quilt when they come to the National Mall. So they all have a unique reference number, every individual story, and then each block has 4 stories, so each block has a block number. So when people come to the mall, we'll have an app that we're working on, and you'll be able to like put your block number in that you got emailed when you made your quilt and find generally where, not exactly where, but generally where your quilt is. So hopefully you can see it, when it's on the National Mall. And yes, we have a database that was built by Dan Staples, who's this amazing person who's been part of Force and helped with Force stuff for a long time. He built our website, he built our database, way back when he made our Pink Loves Consent website, but that's another story for another time. And it's managed here in the studio by volunteers and by Shanti. So we have like the quilts in progress as they're being sewn together, stored over here on the shelf, and yeah, they're kind of just getting stitched together piece by piece. So.
I want you to tell them about this rolling process.
It's very specific.
Closer. So I think Hannah came up with how we roll them up to store them, because like she was saying, they all have a block number, and so we write that on the bottom, right corner on the back. And so the way we fold them is how you would fold like a sheet, by like folding it hot dog style several times and then rolling it up so that when you're done, the block number is on the outside of the package, so that way we can easily identify it and file it according to number, so they all have their place. And then there's other kinds of folding too that we need to do while processing the quilt. When we're sewing on the backing material, you have to sew. It's like, since the quilt is 8 feet by 8 feet, that's obviously like a very large piece of fabric to be managing when you're trying to sew.
Yes.
So you do have to. This folding was one that I came up with, where you kind of roll up the sides and then roll up the whole thing so you can unfurl it through the sewing machine when you're doing the center line. So yeah, that's another fun thing about a project like this is the like ways that you physically interact with the pieces and the like sort of like small rituals that you come up with for like storing and working on them that become like just part of your day.
And it's just wonderful because I was just amazed with it. It's just the love and the caring is just so important. And that's what the people put in the quilts, and that's what you all put in the quilts and this organization. Please tell people where they can find more about Force and the Monument Quilt.
Sure. Well, where we keep most of our events is our Facebook page. So that's facebook.com/upsettingrapeculture. You can find us on Instagram at upsetting_rape and on Twitter at upsettingrape. And then our website is upsettingrapeculture.com. So that's where you can donate. You can find the Monument Quilt website, find how to make a quilt, learn more about the listening campaign, contact Charnel to get involved and get your story recorded. All that can happen on our website and through our Facebook page. So.
I would like to end just with you all saying, okay, what Force means to you and what the Monument Quilt. And I'll start, okay? Force is an organization that women can tell their story and be believed. And get help through art and togetherness. That's the way I feel about it. Anybody else like to share?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, what you said about people being able to find healing through art. Yeah, so for me, that is one of the most important things that Force can offer people, and I think it's cool because Force can offer people two things: really something that's private, which is making your own artwork, and I think that's always going to be private even if you're around people when you're doing it, and then sharing that artwork with other people in community. So it encompasses like different kinds of healing, and that's why it's so helpful to people, and so that to me is really beautiful.
Force to me is a force of healing.
A force of healing, I love that.
Force to me is a force of healing because it helps everyone who comes through our stores with the use of art, whether or not they're male or female, young or old, LGBTQI or not. Everyone is included in the healing process. And so for me, that has been a really amazing thing to know with Force.
Anna?
I think for me, like the reason activism is healing for me, which is one of the things that the Monument Quilt and the listening campaign are all about, is that we can like create a different kind of world. And I think what's really powerful within Force is not just that we're like creating that world through the work that we're making, but also through trying to be better in how we do that work together. And so like, you know, even within like Force, we have a leadership team and within our staff, I think there are such incredible people that are always willing to like hold us accountable to being better as we're trying to model a different world that is free of rape and free of oppression and free of racism. So.
You all, this was just a wonderful, wonderful interview. And the people out there, you have an organization that you can go to when you need help. Force is there. You have resources too that you can give people. So please, you know, if you need them, they're there, but they need support too. And you cannot be around a better group of women because it's just wonderful every time I come here and help. And I like to give everybody a hug and say thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm going to be interviewing you all again after the National Mall, okay, next year. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.